All right, welcome. This is the Take Your Health Back Now podcast. We are recording this October 22nd of 2024. If you're catching this on the replay, if you're joining us live in our Facebook group, feel free to comment, message. I'll keep an eye on that while we're going. So today's topic is going to be all about seasons of change and planting seeds for the future. What you do now, the actions you take now are creating your future for yourself. So you really have to be mindful of that. And we're just going to talk about that in this lovely fall day.
Right. And what started this topic was it dawned on me today that today is exactly 3 weeks from the last day of the year. So, people always first of the year, now my New Year's resolutions. What am I going to do? What am I going to do for my health? All of a sudden, you're going to start doing all of these things for your goal. Well, how about start now or start thinking about it? Because what you start doing now will affect where you are January 1st. And that's just an example. That's what got me thinking about it today. But
Yeah.
that
10 weeks is not a long time, and you can say it different ways. 10 weeks to me sounds like a short amount of time. 90 days sounds like even shorter, but then you say something like 3 months or a season, fall into winter, and then it seems super far away.
right, for a quarter. But yeah, it's really not that far away. But also, what we always come from the standpoint of health, of course. And when you think about chronic health conditions, symptoms, if you have a diagnosis, if you have an autoimmune condition, if you have cancer, if you just have weird random symptoms going on, you don't feel quite well, you just have a sense of unwell, all of that started years before. It's very slow build up to get to this point in time. So whatever you do today, whatever your habits are, whatever you change or don't change, is creating your tomorrow. So that's the whole topic of this. And it all comes down to mindset. And again, we come from an aspect of health. We're looking at your health, but this goes for any area in your life.
Right.
So we're just going to kind of have a conversation on this and go from there. But I did want to say with a couple of things. Remember when we talk about a diagnosis, so a lot of people will say, I've talked to so many people this week that have a diagnosis of this or that. Right. A diagnosis is simply a collection of your symptoms, the way your body's expressing that it's overburdened. And conventional medicine can lump them together and now make a diagnosis. So that's all a diagnosis is.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people they're waiting. They want that diagnosis before they can make change. Like for some reason, they have to have that label. So it's important to think about the reason you were searching for that label is because of how you were feeling, because of your symptoms. These things were already going on. You already had these set of issues, or else you wouldn't have reached out to someone to try and find a diagnosis. So that diagnosis, that label doesn't actually change anything. It doesn't create change. It doesn't give you anything actionable. Maybe from there, if you're in conventional medicine, they might then suggest medicine or surgery, but they're not getting to the root cause. So don't fall into that trap of just because you don't have a diagnosis means you can't do anything to make change.
Or that you're not sick.
Right.
There's nothing wrong. There's no reason to make change. I think a lot of people fall into that.
Yeah.
They may be unwell for many years. They may feel like that's just how they are, or that's, the whole, I'm getting older. I've heard that so many times the last few weeks. People that are early 40s have said to me, well, it's just, I'm getting older. That is not old, you guys.
Right.
Young. So, but then they get to that diagnosis and now all of a sudden they have something and then they try to make a change, scramble to make a change. But the whole, so an example, Hashimoto's thyroid, we see a lot in our office with, you know, who we work with. Very common, but the thing is with Hashimoto's, and that's when your body is an autoimmune response attacking your thyroid, starts attacking yourself. But they can't even make a diagnosis of Hashimoto's for 10 years. Has to be started 10 years prior at least, because the cells have to be damaged by the time that they can see that. And then that's how they make a diagnosis. So just kind of keep that in mind. It starts, you know, it can start decades before, even if you're just having chronic symptoms of some kind, cancer, GI issues, any of these issues that people are experiencing, they start
Right.
years before. So everything that you do, good or bad, is contributing to that now. Also, one other just thing, we've talked about this before, if you listen to us, but just remember that chronic, the word chronic, you know, that's just kind of rolls off the tongue now. Chronic health conditions, chronic disease, chronic symptoms. Chronic means slowly over time.
Right.
Have chronic poisoning, it's a slow poisoning over time, whereas acute means you took a whole bottle of bleach and now that was an acute poisoning and you know that happened. But chronic is a little bit over time. So kind of remember what that word means too, because it's
Right. And it's that like, you know, children's story parable of if you know, you're the frog in the water. If you are slowly boiling, you're not going
Right.
to notice it. You're going to stay in that environment. And that's kind of what you were saying earlier. A lot of people ignore these little symptoms that are coming up because they don't have a label or they're getting older. But as these things are continuing and increasing, you're going to reach a point where it's going to boil over, or you know, you're the frog and you're cooked.
Right.
You know, so you have to take stock of where you're at all the time. Like you should stop, you should check in, you should be planting the seeds for a healthy future. You should not just be ignoring things because it's fine, I'm fine.
Right. Well, we're going to talk about that in a minute. Talk about the excuses that you make for yourself, not showing up for yourself, the fears you have, the reasons that stop you from making change or making a decision, or, you know, all of those come into play and all of those stop you. And again, this is in any area of your life. This could be anything that you want, but all of those excuses, fears, indecision, all of those stop you in your tracks and you're never going to get that what you want. So we wanted to kind of go over some statistics really quick. So I mentioned the thyroid issue, but you know, the statistics on chronic health conditions right now are insane. First of all, so autoimmune conditions, first of all, if you have one, you have one or two more creeping up behind that, because it's taking that much time and now you have all of these things, and autoimmune conditions always come in pairs or triplets, always. So just kind of keep that in mind. But I just put that in for it. I just wanted to add that in. But when you go back to the thyroid, the Hashimoto's, so in 2010, I wrote down there were 85 for that year, 846 cases of Hashimoto's. That was it in the US. Current statistics are 1 in 500 people are diagnosed with Hashimoto's.
That's quite the increase.
Yeah, and that's just Hashimoto's. There's so many variables when it comes to thyroid, and not all of them are diagnosed, because again, diagnosed is just when they've taken those symptoms and put them together. So, I mean, that's a huge increase. That's insane. So it would come down to why that huge increase, you know, let's fix that problem. Cancer in 2010, in the US, there were 1,500,000 people that were diagnosed with cancer. Statistics, projected statistics for 2030, which is what, roughly 5 years from now, 2,500,000 people. So that is up 1 million people for diagnosis. And even with all of this cancer prevention stuff,
Right.
So just kind of,
think that with all of the drugs and all of the therapies and all of the information that's being pumped out, that those numbers would go down.
right.
I mean,
So
our population is not going to double in the next 5 years, so it's not like it stayed the same.
right, exactly. And again, it comes down to the why. Why is this going up? Why are people experiencing this? Let's get to the root cause of that, which means your habits and what you're doing. And then you won't fall into that statistic. That is my reasoning for giving you statistics. We want you to not fall into these statistics. Autism, 2010, it was 1 in 1,000 people. Currently, I think it's up to 100, 1 in 35.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a huge increase. And think about too, that if it's 1 in 35 people, think about our country in 20 years, if everyone has autism, or, how, it's insane. So let's turn it around now. And so you just need to think about your long term. You don't want to be one of those statistics. So what can we do now? And then
And some of these statistics not only are lifestyles getting worse and toxins getting, more prevalent, but also there is financial gain behind this. So they're using, smaller and smaller ways of diagnosing things so that they can increase how many people are being on lifelong prescription drugs, lifelong therapies, so it's taking less to get diagnosed, a lot of what's especially like the neurodivergent type issues, so that you can be stuck in that cycle. And then think about that, not just that many people being labeled and what that means for our world, but that many people just on constant medication and what that means for our world.
Right. And that's a good thing to bring up. It's not only people are getting sicker and sicker because of what we're doing or what is being done to us around us. It's also, yes, it's the testing and the way to diagnose.
Yeah.
And the people's mindset to constantly be going in and getting that testing. So that also doubles the amount of people that have something, because if you hadn't gone in and gotten that testing, you probably wouldn't know. And if you changed what you were doing,
right,
it would have gone away in the first place, and you may have never even known you had it. But it's a hard concept to get around. The only other statistic I had went along with the autoimmune conditions. So right now, 60 to 70 million Americans have GI issues of some kind. And this is diagnosed. This is not the people that silently suffer with these type of things. This is diagnosed.
All the over the counter.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a huge number. And, this is what we deal with all the time. And this is why I chose these particular issues. But, and then the other one was 52 million Americans are living with pain of some kind.
Right.
Huge number. And again, it's people that have gone to the doctor and now it's a diagnosed something like fibromyalgia or arthritis. It's not all the people that are suffering without, that diagnosis. So it's an insane amount of people that are not living to their full potential. So what we're going to talk about is how to get past those blockers for you and actually take the action and live to your full potential.
Right.
And again, I wrote down what you do today shapes your health, or whatever it is for you, tomorrow for a lifetime, or what you do today creates your tomorrow. Or so you always have to start, and we've done lots of podcasts on this, but you always have to start with your end goal. So whether it's by January this year, 2025, how do you want to feel? How do you want your life to be? What do you want? You need to have that vision, of course, that goal, that plan, and then go back to the beginning, which is what we're talking about now, getting over those obstacles so you can take that first step to get to that goal. Or maybe that goal happens to be, you want to be, and in your later years of life, 80-year-old person being your healthiest, feeling your best. And we did a group coaching call earlier and I used this example, but I'm going to use it again for those of you that weren't on that call. But Jenny and I both just recently came from our trip to Florida where my daughter got married, and my mom and I were in charge of watching my grandson's baby and 4-year-old. And so she spent a lot of time doing scooter races with my 4-year-old grandson. So she's 80. So do you want to be that 80-year-old that's zooming around on a scooter with scooter races with a very active 4-year-old? Or do you want to be the 80-year-old that's in a nursing home with a walker, that's going to doctor's appointments all the time, that's on all kinds of medications, that's relying on family members and other people to take care of them? So whatever your goal is, wherever area in your life that you want to focus on that, but then you have to focus on what you have to do everyday habits to
Yeah, the 80-year-old, I mean, depending on how old you are, but I'm assuming for most people, that's a pretty big future goal. So that's kind of a big overall lifestyle, focusing on that forever. And you can do smaller things too. So then you can think of that like as your big goal, or you can think of, in a big goal in any other area, like maybe, financially, you have like this huge monetary goal you want to reach, or, maybe you're working for a company and you want to start your own business. And in 10 years, this is what it's going to look like. You can set those big long-term goals, but then you need to come backwards and kind of plant some medium-term goals and some short-term goals inside of that plan, so that you're not just always thinking of super far off, because your brain needs some, actionable short-term steps. And if you're never hitting an intermediate goal, you're going to kind of let that go, and it's going to become more of a dream or a hope or a wish, which are great things, but they don't have outcomes. So you need to make sure that you're, then looking that far out and then seeing what are the steps. Where do I want to be at this point? Maybe where do I want to be when I'm 60? And then where do I want to be when I'm 40? And then, make sure that you're hitting those goals and making like mini actions in between.
Right. And it makes it much easier. Like you said, it's kind of like if you have this giant ladder, this giant staircase, and you look up and it's like super scary because it's Jack and the Beanstalk up into the clouds. And the end of it is, and it's, freaking you out. Or if you have just a regular 8-foot ladder, you can see the top. It's attainable, and it's not so scary because you can just climb each step. Or even if
it's not scary, like think about if you're standing on the ground and your goal is to get up into that cloud, you're going to jump, you're going to go from here to there. Like that's really hard. If you think about, I just need to get up this next 10 feet and then figure out from there, you have to take steps that you can accomplish, or you're going to be stuck trying to get somewhere that's too far away.
Becomes overwhelming. Or if you think about like you're going on vacation and you're going to drive for 3 days to get there nonstop, that would be exhausting and overwhelming. Or you can stop each night, however long you decide to go, and then you stop. So it's kind of like what Jenny's talking about. That stop is that regrouping. And then now I know I only have to go this far. And now I know I have to go this far. And then you get to your goal. But it's what you're doing along the way. It's all of your habits. It's all of your mindset. And I just wrote down, and we talk about this a lot, but it's so true with anything. Mindset is everything. You have to always get the mindset piece right, or you will never get anything else.
Yes. And remember, it's your perspective. We're not saying that you have to walk around going, la, 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 rainbows and sunshine, I'm going to get everything I want. You have to have a mindset for that goal. So like we're talking about, you have to say, what am I trying to accomplish? What do I need to do to get there? And then keep that mindset that I'm working towards this goal. This is where I'm going to be. I'm making this change. it doesn't have to just be, oh, I'm going to be a millionaire. I'm so excited to be a millionaire. And then you don't do anything. Like
Right.
it's, sometimes people take that word the wrong way. It's not just your positive thinking, it's your entire mindset.
Right. I heard somebody say the other day that she walked into a gas station and they asked if she wanted a lottery ticket. And she said, I am the lottery ticket. Same thing. You buy a lottery ticket and then you just hope and pray that you'll win and get the big prize, or you are the lottery ticket. What are you going to do to get
Right.
you're going to do the work and you're going to do it. But that first piece of doing the work, whatever that is, whatever your goal is you have to get past your excuses, your fears, setting the bar low for yourself, putting everyone else in front of you. So we're going to kind of walk you through that. And this is a really good exercise. If you listen to this piece and then take this information into your own life and maybe sit with yourself and really evaluate your life, look at your life, where you are, and look at what's taking all of your energy. Look at where in your life you're putting yourself first before you being first. Where in your life are these fears showing up, or what excuses are a huge way to hold
Right.
no matter what it is. So what excuses are you telling yourself? And a lot of times they come around money. So
Yeah.
excuses, well, I can't do that right now. Can't do that program right now because we've got this trip coming up, or I can't do that program right now because my husband wants to buy this new TV, or I can't do that thing right now because we're going to put on that deck, but maybe next year, or, I don't really have any money right now because even though I live in this big fancy house and this big fancy, and I buy my Starbucks 3 times a day, and and so you can kind of think about priorities too. And
Yeah. And even on that, like the money piece, even if it's not priorities, which is what all of those things were, even if it is legitimately, I am not making enough money in this moment to do these things, either way, people just stop right there and then they put it off and they're like, oh, in the future it'll happen. No, you need to then say, okay, if I don't have that money right now, when do I want to start this program? What am I doing in the meantime to come up with that? You have to set a goal and make actionable steps, not just say, I'll do it sometime in the future. It's not right now. If you really want it to happen, you have to then say, okay, are these excuses just priorities and just my fear and I don't really want to start? And why is that? Or is it, legitimately, I don't have the pieces in place. What do I need to do to get those pieces in place? And by what date?
Right. And the putting it off for the future is another excuse. It's easy to do that. Well, I can do that in a few months, or everybody does this all the time. It's easy to do, to say, oh, well, I can do that next week, or I can do that next summer, or but it comes down to what we said in the beginning. What you do today, which includes decisions, affect your tomorrow. So if you're putting it off till next summer, again, we're coming back to health. If you have symptoms, whatever they are going on, and then you put off making changes or getting that help till next summer, when it seems like that would be more convenient, well, now you've had all of that time to have more symptoms come up because you haven't made any changes. And then next summer, even if you do start, it's going to be longer to get to your goal because you put it off. Or at that point, you might be putting it off again. I mean, it's easy to do. It's just we get busy in our lives. So just always remember that putting yourself first is not selfish. That's a huge thing. Even if you have to write it down and say that, putting myself first is not selfish. You have to show up for yourself and put yourself first, do what you have to do so that you can be the best version for everyone else.
Yes, it is the airplane mask. Everyone knows this. Like, if you are with people who cannot help themselves in the event of a crash, get your own air, get yourself situated, and then help them. Because if you're trying to help them before you help yourself, no one's going to make it.
Right. I talk to moms a lot. I mean, it seems to be especially women
Yeah.
that, well, my kids are my everything. My kids are doing this. My kids are in these things. My kids, I have to do this. And then they can barely function, the
Right.
mom. And they're putting their kids first, which is fine. I think all mothers do that, but you also have to think, kind of switch your mindset and think about you in order to be the best version for them now, and then the best version for them in 10 years, and then the best version of yourself for your grandkids. You need to put yourself first now so that you can be your best version for them and also for yourself.
Right. And people don't see that. They think that they're taking things away when really they're adding. Like, you know that you're having symptoms, you're having issues. We're talking about health and people that are talking to us. And then they're saying, well, these health issues that are bothering me aren't severe enough for me to focus on them, when really they're sucking energy, time, money away from the family, away from the kids, and that's just going to increase. So if you don't make a change now, it's just going to get worse down the line. And then you're putting, I mean, this is future thoughts, but you're putting your adult children in a position where they are now taking care of you as someone who is unwell, older, and now that's all on them. Is that what you want? You're just taking like today's issues and putting them on future people.
Right. But it's easy to not
Yeah.
think that far ahead. And the other thing that people tend to do, everyone tends to do, is just say, well, I can power through. I can still, nobody knows that I don't feel good. I can still power through. I can do what I need to do. But if you're powering through, it means that you're running on empty, and body is not going to be able to heal. Things are just going to go south for you if you're just powering through all the time. You're going to get to a point where it gets worse, or you crash, and you're not going to be able just to power through. So again, you have to put yourself first. I thought of a car analogy today. So, we always hear about imagine you're a high octane car. So you have to do everything you can to keep it at peak performance, right? But I was thinking today that what so many people that we work with, when they come to us, it's kind of like they're powering through, they're doing the thing, but it's like the car's tires have nails in them. So you have a nail in your tire, so it keeps going flat. But if you put some duct tape over it, it's going to stay.
Right. And you just spend like 50 cents once a week to put the air in the tire.
Right. And you keep
little bit.
Or if there's a hole in your gas tank and every morning you go out and it's out of gas, and you can just pour in some more gas and then you can take off, or the oil, it's kind of like those magic drops we keep talking about, or people that feel like they're, deficient in vitamins. So then they take the vitamins and they feel better.
Right.
It's kind of like that. You're adding this in, but you still have the hole in your gas tank, or the hole in your oil tank, or the nail in your tire. It's not sustainable, and it's not helping in any way.
No, and you feel like you're powering through and you've got it and you're doing it, but the people around you notice these things. Your family, your kids, those people that lean on you, they notice the leaking, they notice the adding in, and that you're not running, and they try to make accommodations for you, and you may not know that. So you think that you're fine and no one notices and you're pushing through, but it really does affect the entire environment around you.
Right. Yeah. And definitely your family and your work environment. I don't know how many people I've talked to this week that they're having low energy, concentration problems. They cannot concentrate on anything. They're having brain fog issues of various kinds. They're having motivational issues. They just have no motivation. That directly affects your work life as well, not only your home life, but also your work life. It just, like Jenny said, it affects all aspects of your life. And eventually it's gonna come back to bite you. I mean, it's just, you can't keep going on like that forever. And if you think about your 80-year-old self, if that's the way you're living your life right now, because you're giving yourself away to everyone else, you're giving yourself away to your family, to make them, trying to make their life the best you can. You're giving yourself away to your work to get through your work and do your best there. You're giving yourself away to everything. What about that 80-year-old you?
Right.
What are you, what version of you is that going to be if you keep living your life like that now?
Right.
So we just want you to really think about that and think about what you need to do now to make changes in your life so that that version of you, it's still a version of you. It's kind of like your child self that we should all carry with us, that child that we were still within us. Well, there's also an older version of you that has yet to come. So you've got to think about that person as well. It's still you. I had just wrote down, don't get distracted, take time to show up for you, for the future version of you. And that's
Right.
just what we were just talking about. But excuses, think about the excuses. So think about whatever it is you're going for, whether it's your health, like Jenny said, starting a new business, you want to quit your job, go to a different job, you need to move from your house. Maybe it's just something like, I want a pool in my backyard with, I don't know, whatever it is. What do you
Right.
have to do to get that?
Right, like there's gonna be change. And sometimes people, okay, they've gotten past their fear of coming up with the goal of like saying, I'm gonna do it. They've gotten past that, right? And then they've decided, okay, this is my goal. I'm ready to make change. This is where I'm at. And then they get into that change. And that's where the excuses come in. So sometimes change is really scary. Most of the time, change is hard, change is uncomfortable. So, yeah, so for the people who actually get past this first issue and are doing it, this tends to be a big stumbling point for people too. So, you have to understand that change is kind of chaotic. So, think about like where we are right now. If you're in the Midwest with the weather, it's fall. Fall is one of those like liminal spaces. It's a change. It's not constant. We had, freeze last week, several nights. It was so cold. And then this week it's 80. And it's the same month, it's the same season. It's a season of change. It's going up and down. And anything that you're making change for the better, which is, what we're talking about, there's still going to be ups and downs. There's still going to be a little bit of chaos. There's going to be a little bit of discomfort because it's something new. It's something different. You don't want the same stuff you had because then you'll end up with the same stuff you've got. So you have to get comfortable with discomfort. You have to understand that change will bring some things up and you acknowledge that and you work through it, but you can't let it stop you.
Right. You have to be willing to close the door on the old version of you so that you can open the door for the new version of you. You can't be both at the same time. That's huge. And yes, change is uncomfortable always, no matter what. And it's something that we don't, you don't know. It's kind of like jumping into the abyss. You don't know, and it's scary, but anything in your life, any kind of change, you have to go through that. Or, okay, here's an example. This summer, there was a big tomato caterpillar eating my tomato plants. And I took him and put him in like an aquarium. And I kept him in there and he turned into a chrysalis within a few days. So he went from a giant green caterpillar, I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about, with the big horn on his head, to this little, about this long, maroonish brown chrysalis. So that's a huge change. It doesn't even look like the same thing. Then he got himself buried into the dirt. They go under the dirt, stayed there for about 3 weeks. and then came out and it's a big giant caterpillar, I mean, moth about this big. So if
Right.
you think about it's like the caterpillar to the butterfly, it's the same thing. He went from a big, thick green caterpillar, turned into the little chrysalis, which turned into this great big brown, beautiful moth. It's amazing. And who knows what even happens within that chrysalis to change into this.
I'm sure it's uncomfortable. Like, that's crazy change. And it's also very different. What he was doing at each of those stages was very different. Like, just eating, 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 and then to being in there just changing, no outside world, depending on yourself, and then coming back out and being, that fully finished goal. That then he just has to keep up with healthy habits so that he can stay alive. That's that's how change works.
But it's just a good example. So the 4 things that I wrote down, this is your homework to work on. So if you get these things right, if you really look in your life and think about these things, and how you can make changes with them. Sorry, my dog is out there. He looked like he caught something. Oh, it's a stick. Never mind. So if you get these right, this will help you then move forward. And because these are all things that stop people. So your energy leaks. So these can be, when change becomes uncomfortable, like Jenny said, all of a sudden it's easy to go, oh, squirrel, something over here now has my attention, or oh, there has my attention. So what is capturing your attention and pulling you away from what you need to do? So that can be all kinds of different things in your life. It could be your closet is a disaster from summer and it needs to be, cleaned out, but you don't really have time for it, but it's really bothering you. Or if you have your bedroom space has now turned into half an office space because you're working from home, and all of that clutter in there is
Right.
kind of stressful to you, giving you a kind of a physical anxious stress. Or who knows what is going on in your life, but you'll be able to identify what is pulling your attention always away from what you're trying to do. So write down those energy leaks. That's huge. And then either clean them up.
Right.
Maybe it's bills you need to pay. Maybe it's something on your to-do list that you keep putting off, but it's pulling you that direction. Do it, finish it, be done with it. And then you won't have that energy leak anymore. Also, cleaning up your space. So like, my office here, I had to make it where I like it. I like words, like I've got follow your dreams. I've got life isn't about, reinventing yourself. They told me I couldn't, and that's why I did. But there are words, positive quotes around. We've got our wellness trees back here. Jenny's got lavender in the background in our book and all these things. So make your space a good space for you, because that can be an energy leak. Even if you have, you've noticed that your clothes are, I noticed this on vacation. It's like 3 shirts I put on and they had holes in them. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, this is really bad. That can be an energy leak where just throw them away. You maybe love them at one time, but they're finally,
Right.
You need to get the new shirt.
And this is why it's important to have that goal and have those action steps, because if you don't, then all of these energy leaks are going to be going on all the time, but you're not going to realize they're taking you away from where you need to go, because they're just, you're doing this and you're doing that and you're doing this and you're doing that. And you have no focus. So you're just always busy with busy things, and you have no purpose. So this is why it's so important to come up with the goal and the action steps. And then you can identify what's taking me away from the goal, what's heading in the wrong direction.
Right. Sometimes it can even be just that you need some time to yourself.
Yeah.
No, I feel that way sometimes. You just need to be with yourself doing whatever it is you want to do. Maybe you just want to be out in your garden, whatever it is. So take time for you, because otherwise you're constantly thinking about it. You're like,
right.
I have to do this. I wish I could be doing this. Well, okay, take a little bit of time and go do that. That'll make you
Right.
better. And then your energy isn't going towards that. So think about that. So that's number one, energy leaks for you. Second one would be excuses. So what are the excuses you're constantly telling yourself? You know, I can't do that because I have this going on. I'm too busy this week, maybe next week. I don't have enough money now. You know, we've got to buy this thing. I've got to do this, maybe later. You know, there's always excuses.
Right. Yeah, we went over lots of those already.
Yes, but what are the excuses for you? Just make a list of them. And as you think about, sometimes you can't identify them, but then once you're aware of them, once you're thinking about it, you're like, oh, that's an excuse. So, you know, write it down and then try to let those go, because they will stop you in your tracks every time, no matter what it is. Fears, you know, we talked about that. So identify your fears. What is scary to you about this change you want to make? Or
Right.
what's scary to you about taking this next step, or, you know, whatever it is for you.
And sometimes people, for some people, it's hard to identify it as a fear because, you know, like, no, I'm not afraid of anything. I can do everything I want to do. So
Right.
look for things that make you very defensive for no reason, or things that just bring up like anger for no reason. You know, if someone says, you know, you should do this, and it just makes you angry, is it because you're afraid of that thing? You're afraid of that change, you know? So it's okay to have fears. It's okay to be afraid. It's a normal human emotion. You can acknowledge it and then figure out why it's there, work through it, you know, go around it, whatever you need to do, but you have to acknowledge it. So look for those signs.
Yeah. And then what are you tolerating? That's a big one for people too. What are you putting up with? What are you tolerating? You know, anytime that you're putting up with something, it's usually not a good thing. Or tolerating, you know, are you in a relationship that you're tolerating? Are you in an environment that you cannot stand, like maybe a work environment, but you're tolerating it because this is your job? Or
Right. It's not quite bad enough that you hate it or it's awful or it's hurting you. You're just, that's what tolerate means. Like you're just dealing with it. You think that it's not bad enough to change, but it's creating this negativity. It's sucking your energy. If it's not creating positivity, it's creating negativity. You know, you're never in a state of neutrality. You're going one way or the other. So tolerating something is not good.
right, or settling, you're settling for something that it's the same thing. It's keeping you in neutrality. It's keeping you in the same place. So anytime you want growth, you want to grow in your life, whatever it is, you have to have change to grow. And if you're settling for something, whatever it is, it's keeping you in that same place. Or, you know, a lot of people settle because it seems safe. You know,
Right. Even think of the word and the connotation settling. You're like going down, it's heavy, you're settling. Like it's not a positive thing.
right. But it's also not scary because
Yeah.
it's, you know, so
So,
think about what you're settling for and what you are tolerating. So if you do all four of those things and identify all of those areas in your life and move on from them, and you can do things like some people will make a list and then burn them, you know, light a candle. Some people will
right.
bury it in the yard, rip up the piece of paper, you know, whatever works for you. But it's a way, it's kind of like a ritual of releasing that, you know.
Right.
I acknowledge that and I release it and I don't need you anymore. And now
Right. And that is a way of telling your brain you no longer need to focus on this thing. It's no longer a point of interest. It's no longer something that's causing harm. And then your brain will have something else. You have to give it something else to focus on, like your goal. And it's amazing how that will just work in the background.
right. So that was pretty much what we had. But I would say for you guys, do those four things. And then also, again, since we're at 3 weeks, you know, right now, if you listen
3 weeks.
months from now, we're 10 weeks. from the end of the year, really think where you want to be starting the start of 2025 for yourself, because that's a short-term goal. That's doable,
Yes.
say 90 days. And then do these 4 things. And then you've got that whole time to know what you need to do, to step forward, to try that new thing, to sign up for that program, to start that new job, whatever it is.
Right.
It's cleared and you can move forward, if that makes sense. So I wrote down close, we already said this, but keep this to heart, close the old version of you and make room for the new version. So that's what this exercise is.
Right.
You're releasing those, you're closing that door, and you're making room for the new version of yourself.
Right. Be thankful for that part of you, that part of your life, that person that you were that got you to where you need to be to make this next step.
Right. And then I said the best version, I said the world needs you, the best version of you showing
Yeah.
up for you and the world. That's huge. But yeah, this is a really great exercise. And use it again and again whenever you're trying to make a big decision. So
Right.
hopefully this helped for you. Definitely keep this in mind when you're thinking about your health moving forward, that it takes a long time to get sick. It takes a long time to get symptoms.
Right.
What you're doing today can turn that around or make it worse. So hope that helped, and get your plan together for the beginning of the year, and then we'll see you next week, right? So
Maybe. Yes. So we're hoping to start on Fridays, having our podcast again live in our Facebook group. If you aren't part of that, head over there and join, and then you can get these live where you can comment or join in or just get it a little bit earlier than everyone else. And then these should post on all of the, streams and outlets on Mondays moving forward.
yes, okay. So we'll see you then. We'll make these last 90 days of this year really great.
Yes. All right. Bye.